The Andari people were starving. Their world, once full of life, color, and joy, had become gray and silent. Rivers that once sparkled under twin suns were now just dry cracks in the earth. Forests had turned to dust, and the animals that had once roamed freely were gone. Every day the Andari watched their crops fail, their livestock weaken, and their hopes fade. Mothers held their children close, unable to offer food, and fathers stared at empty fields, their hearts heavy with despair. Even the brightest minds of their civilization felt powerless against the slow, creeping death of their planet. In desperation, the Andari leaders decided to reach out beyond their dying world. Their species had explored the stars for centuries, but no one had ever helped them in a time of true need. They sent messages across the galaxy, hoping someone would listen, hoping someone would care. Many messages were ignored, some were laughed at, and a few brought threats of exploitation. Yet one message they sent stood out from the rest. It was simple, honest, and full of desperation. "Earth, help us, please." No one in the galaxy had seen such a plea answered in the way it was about to be. Other civilizations might have sent advisors, weapons, or trade agreements. Earth, however, sent ships. Massive ships, their hulls shining like polished silver, appeared above the Andari world. The first glimpse of them filled the Andari with disbelief. These were not ships meant to conquer or demand tribute. They were ships of hope. Ships carrying food, water, and tools that could restore life itself. The Andari watched in awe as the ships lowered their massive cargo bays. Crates of grain, vegetables, and fruits rolled down onto the barren soil. Tanks of fresh water spread rivers into dry beds. Machines moved with tireless precision, planting seeds and fertilizing the cracked earth. It was more than technology. It was an act of care, a promise that the Andari would not face extinction alone. Leaders wept openly. Scholars fell silent, unsure if they were awake or dreaming. Children ran through the dust, laughing for the first time in months, their tiny hands reaching for the new plants and food. Andari elders whispered prayers of gratitude into the wind, their voices trembling with hope they had not felt in decades. It was as if the sun itself had returned to their dying world. Yet even in their joy there was confusion. Why would humans do this? What did they want in return? The Andari were used to the universe's cruelty, to help that came with a hidden cost. But the humans offered nothing but aid. They brought seeds, water, tools, and care. They offered to stay, to work alongside the Andari, to teach them how to rebuild. No one asked for tribute. No one demanded power. Humans simply gave, and in their giving, they inspired a sense of wonder that the Andari could hardly describe. From the sky, the harvest ships seemed endless, stretching across the horizon like a silver army. But it was an army of life. Andari children watched as drones and robots planted trees and crops faster than their eyes could follow. Rivers began to flow again, fields turned green, and for the first time in generations, hope took root in the hearts of the Andari people. In that moment, a quiet realization spread among them. They were not alone. In the vast, indifferent galaxy, someone had heard their cries and answered, not with judgment, not with demands, but with love and generosity. Earth had reached across the stars, and humanity had come to save them. And in the hearts of the Andari, a new word began to form, trembling on their lips. Friendship. The Andari could hardly believe their eyes as the first of the harvest ships descended from orbit. The vessels were enormous, shining like liquid silver against the dying light of their sun. Unlike any ship the Andari had ever seen, they moved not with aggression but with purpose, their massive forms silent yet commanding. As they hovered above the barren cities and cracked fields, the air seemed to hum with energy, an energy that promised life, not destruction. From the cargo bays, crates began to descend, suspended by beams of light. They landed gently on the earth, thudding softly, yet each crate carried a miracle. Grains from distant planets, fruits that glowed with healthy vitality, vegetables packed in breathable containers. All of it was meant to feed a people who had nearly forgotten the taste of fullness. Massive tanks of water unfurled like mechanical rivers, spilling clean, sparkling streams into the dried-up riverbeds. The ground, once hard and lifeless, drank greedily, as if sensing that life was returning. Robots and drones began to move across the land. Some planted seeds in precise rows. Others fertilized the soil and repaired broken irrigation systems. Machines lifted fallen buildings, cleared rubble, and repaired homes that had been abandoned for years. The Andari had technology of their own, but nothing prepared them for this. Machines that worked tirelessly not for profit or war, but for the simple purpose of helping life survive. The Andari people gathered in the streets and fields watching in silent awe. Their leaders whispered prayers they had not spoken in decades, and their children laughed running through the water that had returned to the rivers. Even the elders, whose backs had bent under the weight of despair, raised their heads with tears streaming down their faces. It was more than aid, it was a declaration. We see you. You are not alone. For days, the Andari could barely keep up with the activity. The ship's cargo bays seemed endless, unloading seeds, livestock, and tools for rebuilding. Humans arrived in smaller vessels, walking among the Andari, speaking in soft, patient voices. They showed the Andari how to use machines that planted faster than any human or Andari hand could work, how to purify water, how to tend to livestock with care. Every human carried a smile. Every human carried a willingness to teach. Even the sky seemed to shine brighter as more ships arrived. Some brought enormous greenhouses that unfolded like mechanical flowers. Others carried generators to provide energy for the Andari cities and farms. No corner of the planet was left untouched. From mountaintops to valleys, humans and their machines worked tirelessly, transforming a dying world into a canvas of life once more. Yet amidst the wonder, some Andari still felt doubt. How could a species so distant, so unlike them, care so deeply? Was there a hidden purpose, a secret price? But those doubts faded each day as humans worked beside them, ate with them, laughed with them, and rested under the Andari stars. Every gesture, every word, every small act of kindness broke down the walls of fear and suspicion. The Andari began to understand something profound. Generosity could be stronger than greed, compassion more powerful than fear. When the first fields of crops began to sprout, the Andari could hardly contain their joy. Children ran through green shoots taller than their heads, laughing, chasing each other under the watchful eyes of humans who clapped and cheered. Farmers touched the soil with trembling hands, feeling life return where there had been only dust. Even the elders, who had once feared the extinction of their people, walked among the plants with reverent awe, whispering thanks to humans they barely knew but already loved. And in every heart, one thought took root. These humans were not here for power, for conquest, or for glory. They were here because life mattered. They were here because hope mattered. And as the harvest ships continued their endless work, the Andari realized something that would echo for generations. When humanity answers a call for help, the universe itself feels the change. As the days passed, the Andari began to notice something extraordinary. The humans were not only delivering food and water, they were bringing life in a way that could not be measured by machines or seeds. Large groups of humans began to arrive on the planet's surface, carrying baskets, pots, and cooking equipment. They laughed as they worked, their voices light and melodic, filling the air with a sound the Andari had not heard in decades. The Andari watched in wonder as massive kitchens were set up in open fields. Fires blazed in long rows, cooking enormous amounts of food at once. Bowls of fragrant grains, fruits, and vegetables appeared as if by magic. Steam rose from huge cauldrons, carrying smells that made the Andari's stomachs tighten with hunger and excitement. For the first time in years, no one went hungry. Children who had cried from emptiness now ran freely, their hands reaching for food that was warm, nourishing, and endless. But it was not only about food. Humans invited the Andari to join them in cooking, teaching them how to prepare meals that were both delicious and healthy. Elders who had feared the loss of their culture found themselves laughing at simple jokes, tasting flavors that seemed to awaken memories they had long forgotten. Mothers and fathers shared meals with strangers who quickly became friends. Every table, every shared bite was a bridge between worlds, a promise that they were not alone. At first, some Andari were hesitant. They had been betrayed before. They had been given promises that were later taken away. Yet the humans showed no sign of judgment or expectation. They served everyone equally, whether Andari or alien visitors from neighboring worlds. "Eat," said a human woman, smiling warmly, "and tell us your stories. Your world is alive again because of you, and we are here to help." The Andari began to tell their stories. Children spoke of dreams they had not dared to speak aloud. Farmers spoke of the soil once dead, now alive beneath their hands. Elders told of the old songs, the lost festivals, the years when hope was nothing but a whisper. And the humans listened. They laughed, they cried, they celebrated alongside the Andari, as if the sorrow of one world could be shared, healed, and lifted together. The feasts became daily rituals. Each day humans and Andari worked side by side in the fields and kitchens, and each evening they gathered to eat. Stories were exchanged, songs were sung, and even the Andari who had once been skeptical began to smile again. They learned that food could do more than fill the stomach. It could nourish the soul. Humans had brought not only sustenance but also a spirit of joy and community that the Andari had long forgotten. News of the feasts spread quickly. Neighboring planets sent observers curious and cautious. They had heard of Earth, of humanity's strange and unpredictable ways, but even the most skeptical could not deny the warmth and generosity on display. Ships arrived to watch the feasts, to see a civilization that gave freely, laughed openly, and celebrated life even in the face of hardship. The Andari, once ashamed of their hunger, now held their heads high, proud to share their world and their tables with these new friends. And as the sun set each day, painting the sky in gold and crimson, the Andari looked at the humans and realized something profound. They were witnessing a species that understood the true power of giving. Not giving for glory, not giving for fear, but giving simply because it was the right thing to do. Humanity had brought hope not as a gift but as a living presence, a lesson in kindness that no words could fully capture. For the first time in generations, the Andari slept with full bellies, hearts light with joy, and dreams of a future filled with abundance. And somewhere deep within them a quiet thought began to bloom. If humans could give so freely, perhaps the universe itself was not as cruel as they had once believed. The Andari were no longer alone, but the universe still watched them with skepticism. Across neighboring star systems, whispers of doubt spread like dark clouds. Some civilizations mocked the Andari for seeking help. Humans will demand tribute, they said. Humans always have a hidden price. Others warned of worse things, that Earth's generosity was a trap, a silent invasion or a subtle attempt to enslave the Andari. At first, the Andari felt fear creeping back into their hearts. They had waited so long for help, and now strangers from the stars questioned their judgment. Even within their own cities, some murmured, "What if humans are deceiving us? What if they only pretend to give?" For the first time in weeks, anxiety stirred among the people, mixing with the joy that had returned. But then, they saw humans working side by side with them. Humans lifted heavy crates without complaint, repaired broken homes, and laughed openly with children who had once known only hunger. They spoke kindly to the elderly, and every question the Andari asked was answered with patience. Even the most skeptical Andari began to notice a pattern. The humans never asked for more than friendship. They never measured success in profit, nor demanded control. One evening, the Andari Council gathered to discuss the humans' presence. Some leaders were still wary. "We cannot trust a species so different from ours, Wang," said one elder. "What if this is a test we cannot see?" But another leader shook her head, pointing to the fields where crops had grown taller than any Andari had ever seen. "Look at what they have done," she said softly. "They feed our people, teach our children, restore our rivers. If this is a trick, it is a beautiful one, but we see no lies. Only help." The humans sensed the doubt. They did not argue or try to prove themselves. Instead, they continued their work. They cooked alongside the Andari, shared stories under the twin suns, and celebrated every small victory. The first fully grown crops, the return of wildlife, and the laughter of children echoing across the valleys. Each act of kindness became a lesson in trust. The Andari began to understand that generosity, when genuine, needed no contracts or conditions. Even the neighboring civilizations that had watched with suspicion could not help but notice the changes. One ambassador from a distant system arrived, expecting to witness betrayal or manipulation. Instead, he saw feasts where no one went hungry, fields where once there was only dust, and humans who worked tirelessly for no reason other than compassion. For the first time, some skeptics began to wonder if Earth's reputation as a dangerous species was wrong. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength was not in war or conquest, but in the quiet, unstoppable force of kindness. The Andari children, oblivious to political whispers, ran through fields of green, chased by drones that planted new seeds as they played. Elders watched from shaded porches, tears on their faces, understanding that the humans were teaching more than agriculture. They were teaching hope. trust, and the courage to believe again. By the end of the week, the Andari Council reached a decision. They would place their faith in the humans, not blindly, but because every day and every small act humanity proved itself worthy. They realized that trust was not given freely in the universe. It was earned through action, patience, and love. And humanity, without a word of demand or a gesture of force, had earned it completely. As night fell over the Andari world, the stars shining like scattered diamonds, the people gathered in quiet awe. The humans sat among them, sharing food, stories, and laughter. The Andari knew that no amount of skepticism from outsiders could undo the bond being forged here, and deep within every heart, one thought glimmered brighter than any star. Humanity was different. Humanity could be trusted. Humanity could change the course of a dying world. For the first time in decades, the Andari slept peacefully, not only with full bellies, but with hearts that dared to hope. They had asked the universe for aid, and humanity had answered, not with judgment, not with demands, but with a love and generosity so powerful it could be seen from the stars themselves. The Andari world began to change, not slowly, but in a way that seemed almost magical. Where once there had been dust and silence, fields now shimmered with young crops, rivers flowed with clear, sparkling water, and forests began to return. Humans and Andari worked side by side, hand in hand, building a future that had once seemed impossible. Every day was filled with activity, laughter, and hope. The harvest ships continued their tireless work, but it was the humans on the ground who captured the hearts of the Andari. Farmers taught children how to plant seeds carefully, how to nurture the soil, and how to anticipate the changing seasons. Engineers showed the Andari how to repair irrigation systems and construct homes that could withstand harsh weather. Humans did not hurry or push. They guided with patience, answering questions, listening to concerns, and celebrating every small success. For the first time in decades, the Andari felt a sense of pride in their world again. Fields that had been abandoned for years were now green and growing. Fruit trees bore buds that promised sweetness, and livestock grazed on pastures that had once been dry wastelands. Every harvest was a celebration. Children ran through the crops laughing, their joy echoing across the valleys. Elders watched with tears in their eyes, knowing that the pain and hunger of years were slowly being replaced with abundance and hope. The humans taught the Andari more than farming. They taught teamwork, compassion, and the value of sharing. Even small tasks like cleaning a well or repairing a fence became moments of connection and laughter. The Andari began to see that rebuilding was not just about restoring the land. It was about restoring community, trust, and belief in a future worth living. Festivals returned to the Andari cities. Streets once silent with despair were now filled with music, dancing, and feasting. Humans joined in every celebration, learning Andari songs, sharing their own, and encouraging everyone to celebrate life itself. The children performed dances under the bright sun, while elders told stories of old, mixing tales of sorrow with lessons of resilience. And humans listened, clapped, and laughed alongside them, as if their hearts belonged to this world as much as to Earth. News of the Andari recovery spread to nearby star systems. Some came to observe, skeptical yet curious. They saw humans working tirelessly, helping a people they had never met without expecting anything in return. They watched as fields grew, rivers filled, and laughter returned. Slowly, even the doubters began to question their assumptions about Earth. Perhaps humanity was not a species to fear. It was a species to admire. Yet the Andari never forgot the hardship that had brought them to this moment. They remembered the empty stomachs, the cries of hungry children, and the silent despair of their ancestors. And this memory made the current joy all the more precious. They understood that the humans had not only fed their bodies, they had restored their spirits. Every meal shared, every field planted, and every tree nurtured was a promise that life, even after the darkest times, could flourish again. As months passed, the Andari world transformed. The once barren landscape became a mosaic of color and vitality. Rivers carved new paths through fertile lands, forests stretched across mountains, and animals returned from distant regions, curious and unafraid. Humans continued to teach and guide, but slowly, the Andari began to take the lead. They learned to work the land efficiently, care for their communities, and embrace the joy of creation. One evening under the glowing twin moons, the Andari gathered with humans in a valley filled with newly grown crops. Fires were lit, meals were shared, and laughter floated into the night sky. Leaders spoke softly to one another, realizing that humanity had done more than save a dying world. They had given a people the chance to believe in themselves again. And as the stars sparkled above, the Andari understood a truth they would never forget. Rebuilding was not just about land or crops. It was about hearts, connections, and hope. Humanity had shown them that even in the darkest times, kindness, patience, and generosity could create miracles. If you want, I can continue with part 6 next, around 650 words, focusing on the galactic impact of humans' generosity and the great feast that unites species. Do you want me to write part 6 now? You said part 6. Words 650 ka lekho. Or interesting hona chahiye or third person style ma lekhni ha. Or simple basic English ka. Paragraph ma proper emotional. Our attractive ho ChatGPT said, absolutely. Here's part 6. Written in third person simple English. Emotional and engaging, around 650 words. Part 6. The Feast of the Galaxy, the Andari world had healed. But humanity's generosity did not stop there. The humans had one final gift, one that would be remembered for generations. A feast unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not just for the Andari, but for all neighboring civilizations, for all those who had watched with skepticism and doubt. Humanity wanted to show the universe what giving could truly mean. Massive ships arrived, carrying food, drink, and supplies from every corner of Earth. Some of the ships hovered above Andari cities, while others traveled to distant star systems. They brought grains, fruits, vegetables, and delicacies from thousands of planets. The humans did not just bring sustenance, they brought culture, flavor, and joy. Every table, every platter was a celebration of life itself. The Andari were amazed. They had never seen such abundance. Streets and fields, once empty, now shimmered with lights, music, and laughter. Humans and Andari worked side by side to set tables that stretched for miles. Beings from other worlds arrived, curious and cautious, their eyes wide at the sight of Earth's generosity. Some had expected trickery or hidden motives, but instead they found warmth, kindness, and a spirit of sharing that had no limits. The humans welcomed everyone equally. They served the elderly, played games with children, and listened to the stories of all visitors. Aliens who had once mocked the Andari now joined them at tables, sharing meals and celebrating together. For the first time in galactic memory, species that had known war, suspicion, and distrust sat together in peace, breaking bread under the Andari sky. The Andari children laughed and ran among the tables, tasting new foods and playing games they had never imagined. Elders wept softly, moved not only by the abundance of food but by the abundance of love and care that filled every corner of their world. Human musicians played songs, some familiar to Earth, some newly composed with Andari instruments. Music floated through the air, weaving together the languages, cultures, and hearts of every species present. The humans themselves moved quietly among the guests. They did not boast or demand recognition. Instead, they shared quietly, laughed openly, and encouraged others to celebrate. A human chef taught an alien child to roll dough, a farmer showed the Andari how to cultivate new crops, and a storyteller shared tales of Earth's lands, oceans, and skies. Every act of generosity was a lesson, a gentle reminder that kindness could transcend planets, species, and history. Even the most skeptical observers could not deny the impact. They saw how the Andari, once broken by famine, now stood tall with pride. They saw the laughter of children who had known hunger, the smiles of elders who had once feared for the future, and the joy of neighbors from distant worlds who had been welcomed as friends. Humanity had created not just a feast but a bond, a network of trust and hope that stretched across the galaxy. As the twin moons rose over the Andari landscape, the humans led a toast. To life, they said. To friendship. To hope. Glasses, cups, and vessels of every kind were lifted, and voices from dozens of species joined in. The Andari felt tears in their eyes, hearts swelling with pride and gratitude. They realized that humans had done something more than feed a dying planet. They had changed the universe's understanding of generosity, trust, and community. By the end of the feast, the galaxy seemed transformed. Old rivalries felt lighter, doubts were replaced with curiosity, and the Andari, once on the brink of despair, now held a future brighter than they had ever dreamed. Humans had not come as conquerors, nor as traders, nor as diplomats. They had come as friends, teachers, and healers. And their gift, the feast, the laughter, and the love, would be remembered forever. As humans prepared to leave, the Andari looked at them with admiration. Not only had they restored a world, but they had restored belief in something even greater, that in the vast, cold universe, a single species could make a difference through compassion alone. The Andari world had healed, but humanity's generosity did not stop there. The humans had one final gift, a feast unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not only for the Andari, but for all neighboring civilizations, for all who had doubted or watched with suspicion. Humanity wanted to show the universe that giving could be its own power, a force that could change hearts and worlds alike. Massive ships descended from orbit, each one carrying food, drink, and supplies from Earth and beyond. Some brought golden grains from distant planets, others delivered fruits and vegetables of colors the Andari had never imagined. Humans had also brought spices, pastries, and delicacies, each crafted with care to nourish both body and soul. The air was thick with the smells of roasted vegetables, sweetbreads, and simmering stews. Where the ships landed, humans and Andari began building tables that stretched for miles, preparing to welcome not just one species, but all beings who were willing to join in peace. Soon, creatures from neighboring systems arrived. They had heard of Earth's strange reputation, of humans who could be fierce in war, cunning in trade, and yet inexplicably kind in action. They came cautiously, expecting some hidden price or subtle trap, but instead they found warmth. They found humans handing plates of food with gentle smiles, teaching Andari children to cook, helping elders set their tables, and laughing freely with everyone present. Every act carried no expectation, no demand, only generosity. The Andari could hardly believe it. Streets and fields, once empty and silent, were now alive with music, laughter, and the clatter of utensils. Children ran through fields of green, tasting new fruits and rolling dough alongside human bakers. Elders wept quietly as humans helped them prepare dishes from long-lost recipes, combining them with foods from Earth in ways that delighted the palate and the heart. And all the while, humans moved among the guests with humility and grace, as if this celebration were simply the right thing to do. Music rose into the sky. Human instruments blended with Andari melodies and alien sounds from distant worlds. Songs told stories of survival, hope, and friendship. Some creatures who had been sworn enemies now laughed together, sharing tables for the first time in memory. The Andari watched as their children formed friendships with beings from other worlds, teaching each other games, sharing stories, and discovering that trust could cross even the deepest divides. Even the skeptics from other star systems could not deny the impact. They saw hope restored where once there had been despair, laughter replacing fear, and joy spreading like a river across the galaxy. Humanity had not come to demand loyalty, fear, or tribute. They had come to give life, and in giving they had created unity. No weapon, no treaty, no speech could have done what a simple act of generosity had achieved. As night fell, the twin moons of Andari shone on the celebration. Fires flickered across the fields, reflecting in the eyes of humans and Andari alike. One human elder raised a cup and in a clear, calm voice said, "To life, to hope, to friendship." And across species and worlds, voices echoed back in agreement. The Andari felt tears prick their eyes. Humanity had not only fed their bodies, they had fed their hearts, their spirits, and their belief in the universe's goodness. By the end of the feast, a quiet transformation had taken place. The galaxy itself seemed a little smaller, a little warmer. Old grudges faded in the presence of laughter and shared meals. The Andari, once on the brink of despair, now held a future brighter than they had ever imagined. And humans, true to their nature, did not linger for praise. They prepared to depart, leaving behind a world renewed, a people inspired, and a galaxy reminded of what kindness could achieve. And as the ships lifted into the night sky, the Andari whispered to one another, hearts swelling with gratitude and awe. Humanity had not only saved their world, they had taught the universe a lesson it would never forget, that generosity, when offered freely, could unite even the most distant stars. The humans were leaving. Their ships lifted from the Andari soil, gleaming silver in the sunlight, their engines humming softly as they ascended into the sky. Children waved, tears streaking their faces, while elders stood silently, their hearts full of gratitude and wonder. The Andari had been given more than food, more than water, more than tools. They had been given hope, and it was stronger than anything they had imagined. For weeks after the humans departed, the planet remained alive with the lessons they had left behind. The Andari worked their fields with newfound skill, tending to crops and trees as if each plant carried a piece of human care within it. Rivers flowed clean and abundant, and forests spread green across the hills and valleys. Animals returned, sensing life and safety where once there had been only hunger and despair. Andari children played freely, their laughter echoing across the planet, a sound once thought lost forever. The elders spoke often of humanity. They told stories to the children, recounting the ships, the feasts, and the tireless humans who had worked beside them. They spoke not only of generosity but of strength, the quiet strength in giving without expecting and helping without claiming credit. Humans, they said, are a force of hope. They do not conquer, they do not demand. They create life where there was none. Across the galaxy, word of the feast spread. Other civilizations whispered of Earth's strange and incredible generosity. Some traveled to see it for themselves, curious and cautious, and found the same truth the Andari had. Humanity gave not for power, not for glory, but because it was right. Slowly, trust began to grow between species, relationships that had seemed impossible before. The Andari realized that this gift of humanity was not only for their planet, it was a lesson for the galaxy itself. One evening, beneath the twin moons, the Andari Council gathered in the valley where the first harvest had blossomed. They looked at the stars, wondering if the humans were still watching, somewhere across the void. One council member spoke quietly. "They have shown us what it means to care, not for gain, but for life itself. Our people will remember this. Our children will remember, and one day perhaps we too will reach out to another in need, as they reached out to us." The Andari understood that humanity had done more than restore a planet. They had rewritten what it meant to be powerful. Power, they realized, was not measured by weapons or fleets, but by the ability to protect life, to inspire hope, and to unite those who had been divided. Humans had wielded a strength invisible yet undeniable, the strength of compassion. Years passed, but the memory of the humans never faded. The Andari festivals continued, now enriched with songs of Earth and stories of the harvest ships. Children grew up hearing tales of humans who fed a dying world, teaching not only skills but lessons in generosity, patience, and courage. The Andari began to carry the spirit of humanity forward, helping neighbors, sharing food, and standing together as one people. And somewhere, in the quiet of space, Earth continued to watch, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as guardians of hope, ready to answer the next call from the stars. Humanity had proven something that no civilization could ignore. That kindness, when given freely and boldly, could ripple across worlds, change minds, and save lives. In the hearts of the Andari, a simple truth had taken root. The universe could be cruel, vast, and indifferent, but generosity and hope were stronger than any hardship. Humanity had arrived with ships and feasts, but they left something far greater behind. A belief that life mattered, that every being deserved care, and that even in the darkest times, a single act of compassion could shine brighter than the stars themselves. And under the endless sky, the Andari looked at the stars and whispered a word that would echo for generations. Friendship. Humanity had come. Humanity had fed them, healed them, and inspired them. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy the greatest lesson of all, that hope, courage, and generosity are the truest measures of a civilization.